gentlemen, distinguished guests, it's a great pleasure and honor for me here today with such a distinguished group of politicians, business people, academicians, students, and participants at the 43rd St. Gallen Symposium. And taking this chance, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the St. Gallen Foundation and also to the chairman of St. Gallen Foundation's Board of Trustees, my dear friend Joe Ackerman. Moreover, I would like to also thank the International Students Committee, its members and students from the St. Gallen University for organizing this event. Being a graduate of a business school myself, I feel at home. It's been more than 4 decades since the very first St. Gallen Symposium, and since then, this symposium added more and more to its reputation and became one of the most prominent events in bringing together students, business people, politicians, academicians, entrepreneurs, and very bright people from different generations. And it provides a wonderful platform for debates with a clear focus on management, politics, and civil society. And it's a real pleasure for me to make one of the opening speeches today here at St. Gallen. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, when we are talking about courage and rewarding courage, I was asked to talk more about our experiences in Turkey, what we have been doing, and how the courage rewarded us. I have my origins in business. I was a 100% businessman until I became a member of government back in 2002. And in politics, although I have relatively short experience of only 10 years so far, I learned a very important thing. There are always balances. There are always short-term versus long-term trade-offs. There are some short-term pains that you have to live with in order to have long-term gains. Opportunism or populism is at the heart of many failures when we look at the especially economic policies of many countries around the world. But then the long-term perspective, the steps that you need to take for long-term success is most of the time quite difficult to be delivered in the short term. In a way, there is a need of strong political will and courage to do what is necessary but difficult. In Turkey, we have been going through a very important transformation process, a transformation process during which we have made reforms in the area of politics. So political reforms were at the heart of our reform process, transformation process. But also the country went through an important transformation when we look at economy and also the social life as well. We have been doing reforms to enhance our practices of freedoms, practices of fundamental rights, rule of law, and also many reforms to make our democracy function better and better. And this helped our political stability. Many countries seek sources of strength in different areas. For some countries, it is a strong grip of the state. For some countries, security is at the top of the list. But we chose our people to be our source of strength. A system which trusts the people, a system which gets its energy and strength from the people of the country. And whatever we do has been more and more owned by our society at large. Because especially for difficult policies, ownership of the society at large is very, very important for success. We made reforms in the area of economy. We went through a huge fiscal adjustment process. For many governments nowadays, when I tell that from 2002 to 2006, we decreased our budget deficit from 12% of GDP to 1% of GDP in just 4 years. Especially my colleagues, ministers of finance in many countries, understand how difficult of a job it was. But it paid off. We went through an important banking reform. We had to make many, many difficult decisions to increase the required capital ratios, to go through balance sheet by balance sheet to find the vulnerabilities, make stress tests since 2004 every month for every bank to look at the vulnerabilities. And whenever we find something, we immediately act, ask for steps to close the gaps. We made a social security reform, increasing the retirement ages to find the long-term balances, sustainable balances. And healthcare reform, low cost but high satisfaction rate. Public financial management and control reform. And all these have paid off very nicely. We put confidence at the core of our policies. And confidence takes time to build. It is brick by brick you build it. But it is very easy and fast to lose it. I learned it in business life, but in politics, it is no different. You make promises, you fulfill your promises. You make commitments, you deliver. You put targets, and you actually put full effort to reach those targets. You do what you say. And especially for countries, it's very important to have a comprehensive, consistent, coherent economic program which is well laid out, which is well communicated, and which is actually implemented, not to confuse the markets. And when the crisis of 2009 hit, we already had a very strong public financial management structure, so our public finances were very strong. We already had low debt, low deficit, and so forth. But also our banking system was also very, very strong. So the impact of the last crisis on our economy has been very, very limited, and Turkey emerged very fast. But not only what we have done before the crisis helped, but what we have done during the crisis also helped. In 2009, which was the year of fashion for fiscal stimulus, many countries were increasing spending or cutting taxes to stimulate the economy, to attain growth through fiscal expansion. We followed a very different route. We announced a 3-year medium-term program in 2009 for which fiscal consolidation was the main theme. During the last 3 years, we decreased our debt to GDP ratio from 46% to 36%, from 2009 until the end of 2012. When we started to implement this, many people thought it was not probably the right way to go. But our idea was having growth through private sector activity, not through government spending. Because we believe that if the investments or if the spending is made by the private sector rather than governments, it is a much more efficient way of using the country's resources. Being the member of the government for more than 10 years now, I'm still very open to say that it is the private sector doing a much wiser job when it comes to spending or investments. So that's what we have done. Because we believe that growth only comes with confidence. No matter how much you spend government money, no matter how much the central banks print money, If consumers don't feel confident about the future, they don't spend. If the corporations don't feel safe about the future, they don't invest. And if the banks don't have confidence about the economic policies or what to expect, then they are very reluctant to lend. And when spending doesn't happen, when investments don't happen, and when the lending doesn't happen, it is very, very difficult to expect high growth rates. So in our case, we had very high growth rates. 2010, it was 9.2%. 2011, it was 8.8%. But this growth came only from private sector activity, no government contribution. We generated 4.7 million additional jobs over the last 4 years. Over the last 1 year, 1 million additional jobs. Actually, last 1 year, half of the new employments were women. And we implemented interesting targeted labor market policies. For example, for young people who have never been employed before, when they got their very first job, we paid the social security premium for the first 3 years, and we are still doing it. For women at any age, if they got a job for the first time for their entire lives, we have been paying the social security premium for the first 3 years as the government. For vocational training programs, for our young people or for our people at any age, if they want to switch jobs, switch their area of expertise, and when they got this vocational training, we paid them about 10 euros per day so that they covered the transportation cost and the cost for lunch. So that when they left home and went to those trainings, they didn't have to really spend anything, but have some incentive to go and get those trainings. For practical training, when high school graduates or university graduates got their very first job, for the first 6 months in practical training programs, we paid the full salary, not the employer. But after the first 6 months, we are pulling back. If the employer and the employee like each other, very probably that employment will continue. So all these targeted labor market policies helped us to decrease unemployment rate at quite fast rates and increase employment level very, very rapidly, despite the crisis going on. Our income distribution continued to improve. According to the OECD, Turkey is the country which was able to decrease its Gini coefficient at the fastest rate across all the OECD members. Targeted social support policies are helping. Incremental tax regime is helping, but also competition is now working better and better in the country. No more protected enclaves for companies, for families, for some families, or for some conglomerates and so forth. It's open, free competition. Because we believe that only if our companies face real competition at home, then they will be regional and global companies. If we protect them too much, they are simply going to be lazy. So good competition, well-functioning competition, not only helps productivity, but also income distribution in our case. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, also when we look at the global trends, it is very important for countries to expand their horizon. The world is becoming smaller and smaller. It's now much easier to travel from one place to another place. Communication is happening very, very fast and in masses. So as Turkey, a country in Europe, a country in Asia, a country which has close access to Africa, a country in the Balkans, in the Caucasus, also close access to Central Asia and North Africa, we have been doing a lot to strengthen our friendships, partnerships, and alliances. We are already a member of NATO, a member of Council of Europe, member of Organization of Security and Cooperation for Europe. We are an accession country to the EU, although our process took too long, but still we have that target in our mind always. We have been also getting new partnerships. For example, African Union declared Turkey as a strategic partner, one of the only 3 countries which have that standalone status. Just recently, we have become a dialogue partner with Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the only country which is a member of NATO and linked to Shanghai Cooperation Organization. New links with ASEAN, new links with the Arab League, with Gulf Cooperation Council, and our number of embassies around the world is increasing very fast. For example, in Africa, we used to have 12 embassies. Now we have 34, and it will be 36 at the end of this year. With South America, we are increasing our diplomatic existence and also non-stop flights. With Russia and China, we are building very strong commercial and trade partnerships. We are diversifying our trade and investments across the world. Istanbul is now becoming an international hub, a business hub. For example, Microsoft has picked Istanbul for its operations for more than 80 countries right now. Coca-Cola, 93 countries, they coordinate out of their Istanbul regional hub, including all the continent of Africa, all the way to India, including the Indian business, is coordinated out of Istanbul. IFC, the private sector arm of the World Bank, has opened its very first office outside Washington, D.C. in Istanbul for its regional operations. Turkish Airlines now fly to 98 countries, and that makes them number one globally for that parameter in terms of how many countries they fly. And we are trying to also position Istanbul as a leading international financial center, targeting to be one of the top 10 financial centers globally by year 2023. So all these are probably quite ambitious targets, but quite realistic. And what it takes to do it is courage, but a process implemented in a wise way, in a realistic way, knowing our strengths, our weaknesses, but also doing what is necessary for long-term success. And especially nowadays, going back to what I said originally, what we do today should not be just to save the day. We should think about tomorrow, next years, next decades, and especially sustainability. The environmental sustainability is something which is omitted most of the time, especially during the global crisis. But for the next generations, for leaders of tomorrow, we should have also the full responsibility and also set of actions to have a justice between the generations as well. So thank you for your attention. Thank you.